Hey, it's Drybear. The World of Warcraft Dragonflight PTB or PTR is ablaze with changes right now. They've already started working on some 0.5 update features that they'd like to include in the game, and of course, we're looking at class tuning and major changes to the game itself. Now, there's a couple things to talk about here, as 0.5 is a little bit further away, 10.0.5, but we do have some short-term immediate things to address. You can see plenty of these in the videos I posted yesterday going over class popularity as well as class effectiveness, the best classes that are performing right now. You'll find links to those down below in the description if you want to see how the classes are performing. And there's some very obvious outliers that are just outshining or completely undershining everyone else in the game. So while we wait for the 10.0.5 changes to come to live, there is a short-term balance change PTR that is in effect right now that they're planning to release on Tuesday, December 20th. So today's video, we'll talk about the changes that are coming in the short term, and I'll leave the future changes, the new features, and the class reworks, talent reworks that are in that second big update for another video. And if you feel like there's something left out in today's balance changes, just know that some of those that are being left out are being left out because they're getting bigger changes in the 0.5 update. So let's jump into the balance changes. If you have any questions or comments for me, feel free to find me live on twitch.tv/Drybear. I'm live every day. Come by and say hi. Now let's dive into the December 20th adjustment to classes. There probably won't be too much change to this going through the weekend and going into Tuesday. So the next couple days on the reset, we will get these changes. There's some cool stuff in here, some things that kind of shocked me that I didn't think were going to be in here at all. And they've addressed some of the concerns that people have had with some other things not being addressed at all. And that's part of that, again, is because they are doing some major changes going into the 0.5 update. So let's go through what is happening. What are the balance changes that are coming in on Tuesday? First off, Resto Druids, all healing increased by 5%, not in PvP. So this is kind of shocking. I think there's some situations where the throughput, I mean, there's a discussion to be had on whether or not a healing class that is meant to be a throughput god, if they're not a throughput god enough, do they feel like they just need to be increased, right? And I think, you know, Restoration, Preservation, Mistweaver, those are and then Holy Priest are the ones that really should be shining the most, especially in raid content. So we're getting a 5% increase to healing for Resto Druid. Embrace of the Dream healing increased by 25%. This is a talent at the bottom of the Resto tree that has a chance to cause wild growth to heal everybody. It wasn't being picked as much, so they're just trying to address this talent to get people to pick it more. Same thing goes for Luxuriant Soil. There's a chance for your rejuvenation to spread. They're changing it from 1 to 2% for the 2 points to 3%, 1.5 and 3%. So I guess these two talents just weren't being picked enough, so they want to see those being picked more. Death Knight, Soul Reaper damage increased by 10%. This is actually super cool. I think Soul Reaper should be a very obvious pick for Unholy and for Frost, but there were a lot of times on the class tree, Death Knights just weren't going all the way down, so it's nice to see that. Icy Talon's duration increased to 10 seconds, which was 6 seconds, so it's just going to be easier to manage that. That's super nice. Unholy is getting a bunch of changes here. Apocalypse Ghoul duration changed to 20 seconds. This is the one where you consume 4 or more festering wounds. You create a ghoul or ghouls. You get a little extra time out of that, 5 extra seconds, which is nice. It'll be just kind of like a net DPS increase. Death Coil damage increased for Unholy. They have some modifiers allow it to split to multiple targets and get free ones, so it's nice. I mean, this actually should be a sizable change in damage output. Flying Shadows 6%. Scourge Strike 6%, and this will help with AoE as well. Plaguebringer duration to 10 seconds from 5 seconds, and then Reaping now causes the damage of Soul Reaper, Scourge Strike, Festering Strike, Death Coil, increases it by 25% to enemies below 35% was 20%. So Unholy just getting a whole bunch of nice changes, and I guess we'll see what these do for Frost. Maybe they're being a little more cautious. In most scenarios, even Mythic Plus and Raid, it seems like Unholy has been outperforming Frost, but maybe there are bigger changes that are coming in the future updates for Frost themselves. So we'll see how that goes. Evoker, 15% damage on Disintegrate across the board. This is PvP, PvE, Preservation, and Devastation. It did kind of feel like, especially for Devastation, spending your essence on Disintegrate wasn't as valuable as it probably should be. This also will help Preservation do a little bit more damage, especially when Preservation's pushing higher keys. So I guess that's nice. And we'll just kind of see how this works overall. I'd have to dive into more logs for Devastation to see what percentage Disintegrate is contributing, especially if it's just a single target fight, and then just see how this affects it overall. Hunter Marksmanship, damage reduced by 3%. This is interesting. So Beast Mastery in the pre-patch and in the first 2 weeks of Dragonflight, Beast Mastery was dominating Marksmanship and Survival. They gave a massive buff, not massive, like a moderate buff to Marksmanship right before Season 1 started. And I guess they feel like they overshot it a little bit, pun intended. So 3% damage on Marksmanship down. There's nothing here for Survival, which is hurting really bad right now. And I'm hoping that's because they're planning to do some big stuff in the 0.5 update. Fire and Frost Mage are struggling. Arcane's doing really well, especially on single target fights. In raids specifically, Arcane is killing it. Fire struggling the most, so it's nice to see Fire Blast 12% damage, Ignite 5% damage, Fire Blast 12% damage, Fireball 12% damage, Scorch 12% damage. This should have a decent bit. I don't think this is going to solve the problem of Fire Mage right now, but it is nice to have these increased. When you get a hot streak, you might get some nice bonus damage on the Fire Blast, and getting extra Ignite damage is nice. This won't really affect the AoE much, but single target helps it out even nicer. Ice Lance damage 12%, Flurry 15% damage, Frostbolt 15%, Glacial Spike 15%, and Splitting Ice now causes Icicles and Ice Lance to hit another nearby target for 80%, was 65%. So a little bit nicer on the cleave fights for Frost, and Frost is just getting some boosts. There were some parses where Frost was doing okay, but still struggling. Really, the only viable mage spec for hard content right now is Arcane. So it's nice to see these changes, and we'll see after Tuesday what happens there. Windwalker Monk, all ability damage reduced by 3%. I almost feel like that. So Windwalker's in like the top 4, top 5 of overall damage. So they're doing exceptionally well. So if you're a Windwalker, I've seen people in the comments talking about how Windwalker shouldn't be nerfed right now. They definitely are in the top echelon. I almost feel like some of the other classes maybe should be brought up more before we start addressing, things that aren't in the top 3. But Windwalker is exceptionally strong. All ability damage reduced. This will be, it'll dampen that a little bit, and they are doing really well. I feel like Windwalker's working right now, and it feels good, and it looks good, and it's performing well. And so I'm just curious as to why, we need like a 3% damage reduction across the board. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Maybe you disagree, maybe you don't. Priest, Shadow. Shadow is struggle bussing it right now. They're having a really hard time keeping up with other specs, dealing the damage that they should. They're just, it's struggle time. So we're going to see some buffs here, which is nice. Powered Shield mana cost went up slightly. This might be just to limit the hybrid healing that exists, to make sure that they're more reliant on their healers for survival. A little bit of PvP as well. And then Vampiric Touch damage increased 10%. Nice, a little bit more damage. This is a big contributing factor to the overall damage parsing for Shadow. So this will be a pretty significant increase. Shadow Word Pain damage increased by 10% for Shadow only. So Shadow Word Pain increased. Vampiric Touch increased 10%. Shadow Reapparition damage increased by 10%. Devouring Plague 10%. Void Bolt 20% if you're running the Void Eruption, which is nice. Not everyone is, so it's nice to see that going up by 20%. Mind Blast 20%. Mind Spike 20%. Mind Flay 20%. The summon that you get from the Idol of Yasharj increases damage by 5% when Mind Bender is summoned on a feared target, was 15%. So this comes down. This might just be for PvP specifically, because obviously you're not getting a lot of opportunities to fear and then summon a Mind Bender in M+ or in Raid. But that coming down a little bit, and then just flat buffs across the board minus the mana change, which whatever, take it, you can have it. We don't care. Rogue, Outlaw's doing great. Assassination and Subtlety are doing okay. And I think this is mostly Mythic Plus. In Raid, all 3 Rogues specs are doing exceptionally well. Extremely well. They're in the top 3, top 4. If you look at the highest possible parses core damage classes, Rogue is way up there. I still think that Subtlety and Assassination need love in other ways, but just reducing their overall damage might open the window for them to start adjusting that more. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the highest perfect parses, all 3 rogue specs are doing exceptionally well. So that means that all 3 specs are getting a 3% damage reduction. Rip Bozo, rip Rogue. So comment down below if you're a rogue and you're pretty pissed about this. Fatal Concoction's damage bonus for weapon poison reduced to 10%, was 15% for Assassination. I don't know if this will make a huge difference. I mean, it will make a difference, but I don't know if it's like the end of days. 3% across the board for all 3 specs is pretty huge. Enhancement Shaman taking another 3% damage nerf. You know, it's happening, man. I mean, they're taking all the big guys, right? I'm surprised about Marksmanship, because Marksmanship did overtake Beast Mastery, but I feel like Marksmanship probably should be there in the highest level. And then Rogue, Shaman Enhancement, taking a hit as well. There's not huge changes, but 3% does kind of add up, you know? And then Warlock Affliction getting some nice buffs. Malefic Rapture, which is like your big spender for Affliction. Damage increased by 15%. Drain Soul damage 20%. Shadow Bolt damage 20%. Pandemic Invocation damage 500%. That's no joke, man. That is no joke. And then Destruction gets a nice little buff there. Demonology's doing okay. It's probably underneath all these ones that are getting nerfed. They're like just above the fold for Demonology. Affliction's down in the gutter, so they're getting some big just damage adjustments here. And then Destruction is pretty low too. I mean, they're not in the gutter, but they're on the edge of the gutter, like losing their balance, struggling really hard to flex their core so they don't fall in. But they're getting a nice little Chaos Bolt damage. Big overall contribution, which is nice. Warrior Arms, all ability damage increased by 3%. Mortal Strike 5%, Execute 10%. This is for arms only. And then Fury, they're changing the set bonus on their 2 set. Execute critical chance increased to 25% from 10%. 10% crit chance on Execute on 1 ability on a set bonus was kind of meh. So 25% is going to be pretty nice on that. And then Arms getting some love. Again, Arms is a little bit under the fold. They're not in the gutter, but they're definitely, you know, not at the halfway point or doing exceptionally well. So they're going to get an overall 3%, and then Mortal Strike and Execute going up, which is pretty nice. PvP Season 1. And let's talk about the changes in here, because there's some bigger ones, and then let's just dive into it. Their first note is that they were targeting the mana regen for healers in PvP. You'll see how they targeted different specs differently based on how well they survive and hold on to their mana. And then, yeah, so we'll dive into that. Restoration, Life Bloom healing reduced by 10% in PvP, and then Life Bloom, the proc healing reduced by 10%. So just, they're basically, this happens every now and then. Resto Druids can rely exclusively on Life Bloom and maybe one other hot, because Life Bloom can be so strong. They're targeting Life Bloom specifically so that it forces the Druids to cast more and rely on more hots. So they're doing that. And they're also, obviously up here, we do have the Druid Restoration, all healing increase. It does not apply to PvP. So they're not getting this healing increase, and they're getting a healing decrease on Life Bloom specifically. This happens all the time with Druid. Sometimes Life Bloom is insane. Sometimes it just doesn't do enough. So they're targeting that. Balance changes. Star Surge damage, Wrath damage, and Starfire damage increased by 20%. Balance has that problem where they're always casting, so they can be kicked more, and they have like a longer AoE silence interrupt. So their burst is where they're supposed to be really strong, when they store up everything, get the right combo, dump everything, when they feel like they won't be oppressed, when they're being pushed really hard or being pressured. So they're just increasing the damage across the board, which will help constant damage, but also make their burst much stronger, especially with this Star Surge change, which you can get some really big dumps with that on there. They're saying that their burst has gone down significantly, while at the same time their consistent spread damage has increased. This is a healthier place, but we want Star Surge to also be a viable option for spending Astral Power in PvP. We like to reward Balance Druids for casting Wrath and Starfire, since they are more difficult to cast in PvP, which is basically what I was just saying. You get interrupted and kicked a lot when you're doing these. It's the instant, there should be more reward for getting those off when, you know, you're not being pressured. Pharaoh, lead the pack, now heals for 3% of maximum health instead of 5%. Feral was just healing too much. DPS specializations having higher self-healing than we were comfortable with, and we're making an adjustment to the other pack. So Feral can be very difficult to take down unless you have really good burst or lots of CC. But even then, they're very slippery. So this is their healing coming down a little bit. Mana regen on Holy Paladin going down 5%. So that they're gonna have a less mana regeneration than they did before. So they used to have 40% reduction, or sorry, it used to be 40% reduction. Now it's 35%. So they're gonna get more mana regeneration. The way they word this is weird. So their mana regen is reduced by less, which means that they're gonna have more mana regeneration in PvP combat. This is because it's a lot harder to get and utilize holy power in PvP. Because you have to play further away, which means that you are spending more mana directly than you normally do in PvE. So you end up running out of mana as Holy Paladin, so they're just giving them a little bit more mana regeneration. Priest, mana regeneration on Discipline is being reduced by 5% from 15%. So the reduction is being reduced, which means that the mana is going up. So 10% more mana, 10% less reduction on Discipline means that they'll have a little bit more mana. This one, even especially because you have Powered Radiance costs a significant amount. And oftentimes you have to kind of pump your Powered Radiance to get a lot of healing out. And then you can burn your mana out. So it's nice to have Discipline showing up there. Shadow, reduce the duration of Void Volley Horrify to 2 seconds from 3 seconds. They already had, they have the silence. They have some other things that really like play into how strong they are. The extra second coming off of the Horrify is actually quite nice. This one can be a death sentence if it's in the right moment. Reduce the damage of Void Volley by 30%. So they're just nerfing Void Volley across the board. Reduce the absorption power of Powered Shield by 20%. And it does cost more mana now. Reduce the healing transfer of Vampiric Embrace by 20%. So a lot of self-healing coming down. And mana, available mana coming down as well. Shadow Word Death damage reduced by 20%, so you just don't have that. Shadow Priest self-sustain is too high, is what they say. We were making targeted adjustments to their healing. Initially, we targeted Void Volley and the Idol. As we've seen, it could lead to frustrating situations with minimal counterplay when paired with other instant cast damaging abilities. So basically, yeah, if you play Shadow Play in PvP right now, Shadow Priest they just can overreach and create a lot of very doomed situations, which is fun for the Shadow Priest and maybe less fun for everybody else. Monk, Blackout Kick damage increased by 15%. Tiger Palm damage increased by 15%. Remember, there's that 3% damage reduction up here as well, so this may not be as high as you think it is. And then mana regeneration for Mistweaver used to be reduced by 5% and now is reduced by 15%. I'm curious, because I haven't played my Mistweaver in PvP yet, I'm curious if they were actually lasting too long on their mana regen on Mistweaver. Traditionally, Mistweavers are the ones that run out of the mana the fastest, but I guess that's not the case in Season 1. I haven't played it, so I can't comment on it. Strike of the Windlord damage reduced by 30% in PvP combat. This is the Legion ability that Windwalkers got back in Dragonflight, and I guess it's just doing too much damage. So they're reducing it by 30% in PvP combat, and this comes along with the overall damage reduction that Windwalkers have. Rogue, Numbing Poisons, attack and cast speed debuff effectiveness reduced by 33%. This is nice. I'm not really sure exactly how rogues are doing in high-end arena, if they're actually in reliance of this, but it does create some weird breakpoints on casters and ranged characters or the slower melee characters that really rely on these speeds, where if they get reduced too much, they become almost hard countered by rogues. So Numbing Poison getting a nerf there. Death Marks damage dealt by duplicated poisons and bleeds, reduced by 30% in PvP. Subtlety, Secret Technique damage reduced by 30% in PvP. Assassination Bleed damage is higher than we are comfortable with, and Secret Technique has potential to lead to burst windows with minimal counterplay, so we are toning them down. We're also more comfortable with baseline cast speed reduction being 10% in PvP currently, so we're reducing Numbing Poison to be in line with similar. Shaman, Healing Stream Totem, healing increased. This happens actually almost every single expansion, but they end up having to increase the totems because they get killed in PvP. So the overall uptime doesn't match a PvE scenario, and so oftentimes you have to increase it so that, like, if you factor in the fact that it's not going to live its full lifetime, you need a little bit more. So Healing Stream on Shaman coming up. Enhancement, reduce the damage of elemental blast by 15%. Primordial wave causes your next lightning bolt to hit all targets with flame shock for 75% normal damage instead of 150%. So big chunk on primordial. I guess this reduces the AoE opportunity for enhancement. And there you go. So like the AoE pressure and that massive burst you get from spread or split damage off primordial wave. Enhancements coming down pretty significantly. Riptide healing going up 15%. So Resto Shaman's struggling hard. They're getting 2 big buffs there in PvP. Reduce the damage of elemental blast by 15% in PvP combat. Warlock, Demonic Embrace no longer gains 10% additional stamina in PvP. Warlocks continue to be more survivable than we like, so we make further targeted adjustments. If you play Warlock and you agree with this statement, or you play against Warlocks, let me know in the comments down below. Affliction, Soulburn port duration reduced to 6 seconds in PvP. Drain Life no longer grants an absorb shield when healing at full HP in PvP. That is kind of sneaky beaky. So if you're at full health and you'll use Soulburn, Drain Life, you don't get absorb anymore. That interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Yeah, we'll see it pays off. Cotton, Soulburn, Hellstone. Healing is reduced to 20% from 30%, so survivability for Affliction. The cooldown of Call Fell Hunter is now 60 seconds, doubled for Demonology. Have an abundance of control in their toolkit that can be used frequently, so we're targeting the cooldown of Call Fell Hunter. Fell Hunter in PvP is going up double the cooldown. That's nuts. Destruction, Chaos Bolt, 15% more damage. Shadow Burn, 30% more damage. Incinerate, damage 30% more. So they just weren't doing well enough. Destruction just struggling. And honestly, if you can't burst anyone with Destruction, you may as well just be playing one of the other 2 specs. So seeing these damage increases with the state the Destruction's in now is really good. We do like that. So that's good. Warrior Fury, War Paint now reduces damage taken by 5% from 10%. Fury was just being too tanky. Protection, Shield Slam, damage reduced in PvP combat. Rend damage reduced in PvP combat. Thank God. I think tanks in PvP it's a tight walk to walk. It's a tight rope to walk. There are times where they become very frustrating. And I've always hated the meta where we end up getting protection paladins as healers or protection warriors as core in freeze comps. So a little bit less damage on protection. They are already doing a bunch of damage across the board in all kinds of content. So reduction there. And protection warriors are dealing more damage than we like, even after recent adjustments. So they're getting another one. So boom, there you go. This is coming in Tuesday, coming in hot. We'll see it soon. So if let me know how you feel about this. Is this what you wanted? Is this what you're looking for? Or is there something else that's missing? We'll go through the bigger changes in the 0.5 in another video. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. See you there. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.